During the last ice age, the Arctic might be one of the last places you would want to be. After all, most of the Arctic was covered in glaciers thousands of feet thick, and the rest would presumably be a frozen wasteland. It was thought that humans didn't make it to the Arctic until after the last glacial maximum around 18,000 years ago. Our presumptions would be upset when a Russian geologist came across a spear foreshaft made of a woolly rhinoceros horn sticking out of the dirt in 1993. Around it, dozens of other artifacts were found, and soon, archaeologist Vladimir Batolko led an excavation of the site. Named the Yana rhinoceros horn site, it was remarkable for being well north of the Arctic Circle at 70 degrees latitude. Shockingly, in 2004, the site was dated to around 30,000 years ago. This more than doubled the amount of time that humans were known to be living in the Arctic. Prior to the discovery of this site, it was thought that humans only made it into the Arctic after the last glacial maximum, the coldest period of the last glacial period between 26,000 and 20,000 years ago. After this period, researchers thought that people were able to migrate north and ultimately into the Americas with the Clovis culture. This has of course been overturned with sites in the Americas dating to over 20,000 years ago, and of course the site we are talking about. The Yana site has proven that humans were able to inhabit the northern Arctic prior to the last glacial maximum, and further discoveries have found sites all over Siberia. We will talk about the implications for the peopling of the Americas at the end of the video, but now we must talk about how amazing the Yana site really is. The Yana RHS site is located on the left bank of the Yana River, around 100 kilometers or 62 miles from the Laptev Sea. Of course, 30,000 years ago during the last glacial period, the ocean levels were much lower, and north of this site would have been a vast plain for animals to graze in summer months. The wider region of Sakha is an exceptionally desolate and mountainous area with a minuscule population even to this day. We can only imagine how wild it must have been when cave lions and mammoths still roamed. The Yana site itself consists of a number of locations. 3 locations were excellently preserved by thick permafrost, while 3 other locations only have surface material. The Yana locales, which were excavated deep under permafrost, preserve an extremely rich record of life in the Arctic. 3 of these locales appear to have been campsites where these people spent a considerable amount of time. At these sites, 2,500 bone and ivory items have been found, as well as 85,000 animal bones and fragments. First, we should mention the tools and opulent artistic objects that these people created. The stone tools found at the Yana site are a flake-based, relatively simple knapping technology. Blades and microblades typical of the Upper Paleolithic are absent. Instead, flakes taken off of stone cores were used as tools and presumably as projectile points. None of these points have actually been found at the site, though they have been found embedded in animal bones. Larger unifacial and bifacial tools were made, including knives and choppers for butchering game. The relatively simple stone tools are contrasted by their creation of complex bone, ivory, and horn tools. One of these artifacts, which this site is named, consists of a woolly rhinoceros horn foreshaft. The object is 47 centimeters or 19 inches in length and 1.5 centimeters or 0.6 inches in diameter at its thickest. At both sides, the object is beveled on one side. This strongly suggests that it was used as a foreshaft, a component of a spear which holds the point on one end and connects to the spear shaft on the other end. 2 other shorter mammoth ivory foreshafts have been found at the site. Foreshafts have to be one of my favorite parts of the Upper Paleolithic toolkit. They are often made of durable materials and are thought to have been used to protect the main spear shaft. Wood was extremely scarce in the Arctic during this time, making a good spear shaft very valuable. Typically, when a spear is made, the projectile is hafted into the spear, though this often leads to a damaged or split haft. By beveling the foreshaft and main shaft, a strong and durable connection can be made. This can allow one piece of quality wood to be used dozens or even hundreds of times. The more durable ivory and horn foreshafts were also very reusable. Another benefit to their design is that different foreshafts can be quickly switched out. One point hafted on a foreshaft may have been used for penetrating deep into a mammoth, while another may have been useful for causing maximum damage to a reindeer. This complex spear design took quite a bit of time to create. Horns and tusks had to be heated or steamed to be bent into shape and then carved into their final form. These foreshafts are extremely similar to tools used by the Globus culture of the Americas. They are the earliest examples of these bi-beveled bone rods and the only ones found outside of the Americas, perhaps supporting a connection. Besides foreshafts, many other bone and ivory tools were found at this site. Some ivory points are found at the site as stated in the paper, though I haven't been able to find any images of these points. Ivory, bone, and antler points are strong enough to punch through bone, but can also be more durable than the average stone point. A number of fine bone needles have been found at the site as well. Many of them are undecorated, though a few have 4 or 5 dots drilled into them near the eye. Researchers have hypothesized that they may have been ownership marks to keep track of one's own needle. I think that they might have been extra holes that were pre-drilled, so if the needle broke, it could be quickly repaired, or they may have just been used for gripping the needle. Other tools found at the site were involved in the creation of clothing, such as awls and hide scrapers. This is not surprising considering that these people lived in the Arctic. With these tools, they undoubtedly made complex clothing, possibly even on par with the elaborate clothing made by the Inuit. I cannot stress enough how well made some of the clothing of the Inuit really was. I mean, just look at some of this stuff. Besides the utilitarian objects, a treasure trove of artistic and symbolic objects were excavated. Over 6,000 beads made of bone, ivory, and mineral have been found. Many of them were covered in red ochre, and they even made beads out of hare bones. Pendants made from the teeth of reindeer, horse, and fox were likely worn as necklaces. It is sort of easy to understand why one would wear the canine tooth of a large carnivore. Many around the world still do it to this day. A pendant made of amber is of notable interest considering it is not local to the region. It may hint that the people at the Yana site were part of extensive trade networks. Another fascinating pendant, perhaps representing a mammoth head, was made out of anthraxolite. Anthraxolite is a hard black lustrous graphitic coal, and its beauty is apparent. Large bone rings have also been found at the site and may have been worn. Items called diadems were likely used as hairbands. They feature fairly simple dotted designs. One can wonder what these might represent. 19 three-dimensional animal figures were also found at the site, likely representing mammoths. 2 engraved mammoth tusks also contained what may have been hunters or dancers. The most unique artifacts found at the site may be the 3 ivory vessels. These small containers were heavily decorated with dots and lines that covered the entire artifacts. Manufacturing a hollow object out of ivory would have required complicated techniques as well as a lot of time. The evidence does not directly suggest the function of these artifacts. The sheer amount of time and effort put into their manufacture suggests that they weren't simply for holding on to things or for drinking from. A common hunting ritual in the Far East consists of using relatively similar artifacts to give dead animals water as a way of the hunter asking the animal for forgiveness. It is entirely possible that these artifacts were used in a very similar way to traditions that still exist today. Of course, we may never actually know, but their mere existence is significant. The overall diversity and density of the artifacts found at this site demonstrate the development of the culture of these people. Their tools show us that their technology was advanced, and their artistic remains attest to their level of spiritual or symbolic complexity. The fact that they developed all of this while living in the Arctic Circle is very significant. When compared to the innovative cultures of Europe and Western Asia during this time, the people of the Yana site were just as sophisticated. This is not all that shocking when you consider that ideas would have been able to spread more or less across the entire Mammoth Steppe. The technology of hunter-gatherers is often thought of as primitive. The most modern people can't even make rope, let alone understand complex topics such as taking care of wounds or preserving food. Luckily, today's sponsor can help with that. It's called The Book, The Ultimate Guide to Rebuilding a Civilization. The book is an extensive guide to rebuilding civilization, or for understanding all of the amazing inventions that are essential to our modern world. They cover every topic imaginable, such as medicine, agriculture, machines, weapons, and even advanced technology. It is written with a clear structure, carrying the reader through the accomplishments of our species. The book is an incredibly high-quality product with 400 pages providing the reader with an abundance of information and readability. One of the best things about the book are the 200 handmade illustrations that help you understand every concept clearly. It is perfect as a gift for the young and old, to satisfy your own curiosity or just to keep on your coffee table. Ready to get started? Click the link in the description to grab your copy of the book today and become a pioneer in your own incredible journey. Thanks to the book for sponsoring the channel, but now let's get back to the video. Now that we have covered all the artifactual evidence from the site, we will talk about the lives of these people, and importantly, how they fed themselves. 85,000 intact and fragmented animal bones have been uncovered from the site. The collection is dominated by horse, steppe bison, hare, and reindeer. Other animals include muskox, brown bear, cave lion, wolverine, fox, rock ptarmigan, and mammoth. The Yana people were expert hunters who regularly took down reindeer, horse, and bison. These animals made up most of their diet, though other animals were also important. Hare were hunted for their meat, but also their warm and supple skins, which could be used to make excellent garments such as mittens and hats. Some hare have been found complete, suggesting that they were only used for their hide. The abundance of hare suggests that they were caught using snares or other traps. Direct evidence also suggests that foxes, lions, and even brown bear were directly hunted from time to time. This may have been to eliminate competition or simply for meat and hides. Mammoths only make up around 3% of the faunal remains at the site, though a nearby discovery would transform our understanding of the Yana people. In 2008, ivory hunters stumbled upon mammoth remains poking through the topsoil. A proper excavation would reveal over 1,000 mammoth bones. This location was 150 feet upstream of the main site and would be named the Yana Mass Accumulation of Mammoth, or YMAM for short. Prior to this discovery, the main Yana excavations had unveiled an unexpectedly low number of mammoth bones in comparison to all of the other animals. It was thought that mammoths only played a minor role in the lives of this culture, perhaps only scavenging carcasses for ivory from time to time. The newly unearthed trove of mammoth remains has unveiled a story about the Yana people that is far more astounding than previously imagined. The over 1,000 mammoth bones represent around 31 individuals, possibly more. 95% of the remains found here are from mammoths, while only 3% of the remains found at the main habitation site are from mammoths. Analyzing the mammoth remains, stone points were found embedded in bones while holes were found in others. Let's go over all of the injuries before interpreting them. The right scapula of a young mammoth has a flat siltstone point embedded in it. The point that remains in the bone is tiny at less than 1.5 centimeters long and 1.1 centimeters wide. It may only represent the tip of a larger projectile. The scapula was not completely pierced, but the projectile was still launched with considerable force. Another right scapula from a medium-sized mammoth has 2 fragments of a stone point and a fragment of what may be ivory. The stone point is also quite small at 1.1 centimeters long and 1.27 centimeters wide. And a thin ivory splinter is embedded between the point fragments. The ivory may have made its way into the wound as a foreshaft supporting the projectile. This wound hit the mammoth from its right side, almost horizontally. The scapula was not completely pierced. A juvenile mammoth also had a hole in its right scapula, which is 4.9 centimeters by 1.6 centimeters. The projectile went on to hit the thorax horizontally. Considering the height of even a juvenile mammoth, it may have been struck when it was laying down. All 3 of these examples support that these hunters were targeting the vital organs of these animals. Mammoths and elephants have very large hearts that sit right underneath their scapulas. Even a small wound to the heart may have been fatal in a matter of minutes. Their large lungs also sit in the same area. Several other examples from different time periods and places indicate that the vitals were targeted near the scapula. Interestingly, cave art even suggests that this area was well known throughout Eurasia. El Pindal Cave in Spain preserves a heart-like symbol on the vitals of a mammoth, and at Rufinac Cave, linear markings in the vitals may represent spears. The last mammoth found at this site with a human-caused injury was found with a hole in its pelvis. The entry hole is flat and 3.1 centimeters by 1.1 centimeters. It entered on the inner side of the bone. The hole displays evidence of heavy shock caused by the projectile. The spear may have been thrown out of desperation, though it clearly still had devastating effects on this poor mammoth. As mentioned previously, around 30 individuals are represented in the 1,000 bones at the site. By measuring the humeri of the mammoths, they were able to determine that these hunters were deliberately selecting mammoths of a certain size. 69.2% were adolescents and young adults between 1.8 to 2.6 meters tall at the shoulder, and 58% of them were between the narrow range of 2.2 to 2.6 meters tall. This is an extremely specific range. Another 15.5% belonged to subadults and calves, and the last 15.3% were prime-aged adults. Researchers believe that these hunters were after individuals of a specific size. This may have been because their tusks were perfect for making tools. They were big enough to make weapons, though not too curved as young adults. Radiocarbon dating shows that over 2,000 years, mammoths were gradually accumulated. These mammoths all appear to have been hunted by humans, likely one every few years. Evidence suggests that it is extremely unlikely this specific size all died in the same spot over this period of time. The mammoths may have been brought to the site or driven and killed there. This is very similar to sporadic hunting of elephants in Africa during the 19th century. A singular mammoth of a specific size was hunted by spear for its ivory. Interestingly, the mammoth remains found at the site hardly show any evidence of butchery. The Yana people were after their tusks, but also their tongues. Of the 85,000 animal remains found at the main site, only 3% were of mammoths and 5 examples were mammoth stylohyoidium. These bones support the tongue and larynx in mammoths. They are fragile and presumably of no use to humans. Instead, it is likely that they were brought to the habitation site to be eaten, perhaps as some kind of delicacy. This has been documented in certain Native American groups which drove entire herds of bison off of cliffs. Sometimes when there were way too many bison to consume, they would just take their fat-rich tongues, leaving the rest of the carcass to rot. It is possible that the Yana people were well fed and didn't even bother with the rest of the mammoth's tough, undesirable meat. This is perhaps a testament to the skill of the Yana hunters. They weren't near the edge of starvation, rather they were living in times of abundance. The evidence of mammoth hunting at this site is the oldest clear evidence of mammoth hunting anywhere in the world. Of the over 30 mammoth individuals found, only about 4 show evidence of direct hunting. The other 26 individuals who were presumably killed in the same way do not have any evidence of hunting. The weapons that killed these mammoths may have simply penetrated into the vitals, which left no evidence behind. Stone points embedded in the scapula are actually evidence of a hunter missing the real target. This is important to consider in the debate of the extinction of the mammoth and megafauna in general. Though we know mammoths were hunted around the world for thousands of years, at least sporadically, the odds of finding a bone with direct evidence of hunting is extremely rare. The sporadic hunting done by the Yana people likely had little impact on mammoth populations. Every few years a mammoth or two was taken, though after the LGM, mammoth habitat shrunk dramatically. And this kind of sporadic hunting may have become a serious problem for mammoth populations, though that is a topic for another day. The people present at the Yana site would never return after roughly 28,000 years ago. And by the time of the last glacial maximum, any signs of their culture would disappear entirely, though a new discovery would reignite the mystery of the Yana people. 2 human teeth belonging to different individuals found at the site were dated to around 31,630 years before present. DNA analysis conducted in 2019 found that they were a very ancient mix of early West Eurasians and early East Asians. Early West Eurasians range from Europe, Western Asia, and deep into Siberia and are known from cultures such as the Aurignacians. More interestingly, 22 to 50% of the genome of these boys belong to early East Asians. As the name suggests, this group spread out south into East Asia, with the oldest DNA coming from the 39 to 42,000-year-old Tianyuan man from China. The combination of West and East Eurasian genetics made up what researchers call the Ancient North Siberians, or ANS for short. Both of these boys had a mitochondrial haplogroup of U and a Y chromosome haplogroup of P1, both of which originated in Siberia. The two individuals were not closely related and did not show any signs of inbreeding. Their population was relatively large for the time, with an estimated effective population size of up to 500 individuals. It is amazing that from genetics alone we were able to identify that these people were part of a thriving population. However, the most fascinating realizations that came with our further understanding of the ancient North Siberians has to do with the Native Americans. A small amount of ancient North Siberian ancestry is found within the Native American gene pool. A hypothesis was formed that the people of the Yana site may have been directly ancestral to Native Americans, a fascinating revelation. However, further research into the topic found that the ANS ancestry in Native American populations was more closely related to the people of the Malta culture. These ancient North Siberian people lived around Lake Baikal, and their genetics would go on to dominate Siberia. Eventually, this population with ANS ancestry would migrate into the Americas. The direct ancestors of the earliest Native Americans have yet to be found. Their remains likely lie somewhere in the frozen north of Siberia. Though we have found intriguing evidence of the people who stayed behind in Siberia who are directly related to Native Americans. DNA analysis of a 10,000-year-old male discovered at a site near the Kolyma River in Siberia has a combination of ANS and East Asian DNA similar to that of Native Americans. By 10,000 years ago, the ancestors of the Native Americans had already been there for at least a few thousand years. Therefore, this individual shared a common ancestor with the populations in the Americas. It is the first time that genetic evidence from outside of the Americas so closely resembles Native American populations. Geneticist Eski Willerslev of the University of Cambridge said, "The remains are genetically very close to the ancestors of Paleo-Siberian speakers and close to the ancestors of Native Americans. It is an important piece in the puzzle of understanding the ancestry of Native Americans, as you can see the Kolyma signature in Native Americans and Paleo-Siberians. This individual is the missing link of Native American ancestry." Some genetic and linguistic evidence even suggests that the Na-Deni languages of North America and the Unesian languages of Central Siberia are connected. That would mean that the Navajo language is directly connected to languages spoken in Central Siberia, a distance of 6,000 miles or 9,650 kilometers. This connection is seen as plausible by linguistic scholars, though not entirely proven. If so, this would provide the first linguistic connection between the Old World and the New. It is accepted that Native Americans came from northeastern Eurasia. However, much mystery still clouds our understanding of this extremely significant migration. Prior to 22,000 years ago, a direct path of mammoth steppe existed from Eurasia to the Americas in the landmass called Beringia. It was only after 22,000 years ago that ice sheets blocked a land passage. Considering we now have direct evidence that people could thrive north of the Arctic Circle 30,000 years ago, there would have been no issue of technology or subsistence to move into the Americas prior to the LGM. The people that made this so-called migration might have not had any idea that they were even traversing continents, as Beringia was a giant landmass. We now have direct evidence of humans in the Americas as early as 21 to 23,000 years ago. It is possible that people simply walked into the Americas prior to the last glacial maximum. The Kelp Highway or coastal migration hypothesis posits that people may have followed the rich coastlines of Beringia to migrate down into the Americas. This hypothesis is supported by intriguing evidence along the coast and is considered one of the leading hypotheses in the peopling of the Americas. These are both extremely interesting hypotheses, and it is possible that they are both true. The Mammoth Steppe may have been traversed by a group that left no genetic trace in modern Native Americans. This may explain the footprints at White Sands National Park dating to 21,000 to 23,000 years ago. The ancestors of the Native Americans may have only showed up later, possibly using watercraft to traverse the resource-rich west coast. There is one final mystery that may tie ancient North Siberians to the later Clovis culture of the Americas. The Clovis culture, appearing 13,000 years ago, was the first widespread archaeological culture of the Americas. They created excellent fluted points that would spread throughout much of the North, Central, and even South America. The appearance of the culture coincided with the extinction of many species of megafauna, and their culture would transform into other cultures at the end of the last glacial period. Though the Clovis were not the first in the Americas, they were very significant as prior populations were mostly invisible in the archaeological record. Even more interestingly, archaeologists have found similarities between the technology at the Yana site and the tools of the Clovis industry. Their stone tool manufacture shares some relation, but it is their foreshafts that have piqued the interest of archaeologists. Both the Yana and Clovis cultures made bi-beveled bone rods that were almost certainly used to make complex weapons. We know that the Yana are not directly genetically related to Native American groups, though bi-beveled bone rods may have been widespread in ancient North Siberian communities. Considering the Clovis people certainly had some ANS ancestry, it may be no coincidence that they were using the same foreshafts. This is quite a leap considering how faint our current evidence is, and bi-beveled bone rods may have just been reinvented independently. Though to me this connection is far more likely than the Solutrean and Clovis connection, though we will see where the evidence takes us. Hopefully more evidence from the Arctic or even deep into the Americas will help us understand the larger picture of the migrations from the Old World into the New. In conclusion, the discovery of the Yana site has reshaped our understanding of human history in the Arctic. The mammoth hunters who roamed these frozen wastelands over 30,000 years ago were not some primitive survivors clinging to the edge of the habitable world. They were sophisticated, innovative, and deeply connected to a broader Eurasian network of cultures and technologies. Their mastery of Arctic life, complex tool-making abilities, and artistic expressions placed them on an equal footing with the more well-known Upper Paleolithic peoples of Europe. Their genetic links to Native Americans remind us that the Arctic was not some desolate wasteland, but a bridge connecting Eastern Eurasia with the American continent. As we continue to uncover these lost cultures of the North, we must wonder how many other stories remain frozen beneath the permafrost, waiting to be rediscovered. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give me a thumbs up, and a comment wouldn't hurt either. Make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on any future content, and if you found this video interesting, share it with your friends and family. Your support means the world to me, and I'm going to get back to writing my next video now, so I'll see you in the next one. Arrivederci and adios.